my name is Ryan Postel, co-founder of CodeStitch, and in this video we're going to learn how to build this from scratch, mobile first, and I'm going to go over how to use Figma to figure out the spacing, how to plan for this doing mobile first, and this will be a stitch for CodeStitch. I'm just going to make a video series showing how I make them now. So I am going to start with the markup. So I have my HTML, my CSS here. This is what I always start with. If you want to go ahead and make your own, where I just copy and paste the same media queries, we start with 0 so that all of my mobile code is inside of this media query. And I know it sounds redundant, but that's because I want to be able to collapse it so that I can collapse all of these when I have code eventually in here, and it's nice and neat. And go ahead and undo these guys. But it looks like we're going to start, I'm going to start with this just to put the HTML in. So right away when I look at this, I know that so I need this text and this button, and then this header and this little tag at the top. They need to be spread out on desktop, and spread out here, but they're on top of each other in mobile. So what I'm going to do is I need this to be a div. So there's going to be a div wrapper around these two elements, and there's going to be a wrapper around these two elements, and they're going to be inside of another div, a parent div, so that we can flexbox them on top of each other and then flexbox them to the side. And what this background is, the way I'm going to set this up, is we essentially have two sections. We have two sections here. We have a hero and a services. So in this one, this will be the container class for everything. And this container will have a background image of this. And then it will have a padding top of these values. So padding top of 566 there, padding top of 444 there, etc., so that we can get this spacing, this push, and that way it will make it responsive too. If we change any of the content, I can set it so that as this gets taller, this will also push down on it and make it taller. And this is going to be a separate section. It looks like the max width here is 1800. And that means this is going to be 1800. So let's go ahead and get this built. So I think I'm gonna put this to the side here. Zoom out. I think I can make this a little smaller. Nope. Yeah, remove. There you go. Well, no, I want these guys. So I guess I'll just deal with this. So over here in the HTML, every section starts with a section tag. I'm going to do section hero tab. I'm using the Emmet Visual Studio Code extension. That is going to be this one, Elm Emmet, so that I can do what I just did there. Type section ID hero, and like I'm going to do this. I'm going to do .cs container. Hit enter, and I have a container div. So you can code really fast in HTML without having to do all the opening and closing tags. So I have the hero, that's going to be this, and the container is going to be this, and then inside the container we're going to have the content div right here. That's CS content, and then I'm just going to call these divs a CS flex. I use these when I just need to make a flex box out of something. So we got the span.cs topper. That's going to be this guy. We'll take this, paste, and then we got H2 class of CS title. We're going to do modern architecture. Get rid of that weird spacing. And then we have another CS flex, and that is going to be our content. Well, no, I need a P. Class of CS text, add the P, and then we need our A, CS button solid. and that's going to be book a call. So we got that section. Now I want to do the background. So what I always do is I save the code over and over again. So I'm gonna look for my picture element. I'm gonna grab this, and I want this to be a background to the container. So there's that. So this is the background. I'm gonna do a little comment. Background image, and I've already saved it as hero. Let me see if this works anyway. It's going to be fancy modern architecture. This is 1800 by 860. 1800 by 860. No loading lazy because it is above the fold. We don't lazy load things above the fold. We have decoding async that helps it load a little faster. And then always do the alt tag and height and width. So now that we have that, I already saved the icons. So we have the hero. Now we do the services, and I think I'm just going to do them in a separate tag. So I like to do this. I have these little comment tags for every section so that my HTML is a lot easier to read. This will be services. Even that out a little bit. Save. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this. And this is going to be my services. Center that. That way my CSS is also nice and easy to read. You can see here on the side that you can see all the different sections, media queries, so that you can quickly browse the CSS file in probably less than a scroll and a half if you have a whole page. So with the services, I'm going to section services. Now if I'm looking at this from mobile, if I look here, so we got the same padding left and right, and that usually gets added on to the main parent. So I will have a .cs container. Unless I don't need that. I don't think I need a CS container because I'm going to make this into a UL, an unordered list. So when we have cards like this, I like to use an unordered list. It's much more accessible. So we're going to do ul.cs card group. And then li.cs item. And so we have, this will be, if this is an H1, this is in hero, this is a services section. So every section tag, you don't, if they don't have a header, you don't use a section tag. Like if this was just a logos group where it's just logos and there's no headers, no content, then this is not going to be a section tag. These are headers. However, this may look small, not like a big header where you might think this would be an H3. You don't start a new section with H3. You start a new section with H2. So this is actually going to be an H2, expensive living spaces. So inside of here, we're going to have an H2.cs H2. And then we're going to copy and paste that. But we have this arrow image. So I like to create some space. I'm going to borrow the image tag from here. This just makes it a little more readable when I put the image underneath the text like this. This is going to be 2424. And I think I saved that as, I'm looking at the other screen here, right arrow. And it's going to be an SVG. Change the alt to an icon. And we are not going to be lazy loading this. This is going to be a class of CS icon. That should be good. So now we take this, duplicate it 4 times. 2, 3, 4. And just for sake of continuity, I'm going to paste these in too. There we go. So I'm just using the H2 as the parent for this group here, because you don't want to wrap the H2 in this thing in a div. It's not necessary because we already have an li around it. So that's essentially, this is the card itself, and we want this image to be flexboxed with this text. So that's what's going to happen here. This H2 is the parent. We're going to flexbox it. The content will be flexed around the image, and that's how we get this. And we're going to have, we'll probably make this a border, border bottom of this color, and we have 16 pixels padding bottom. So that's how we're going to do that. And then the gap will be 16 pixels. So 16 and 16, pretty standard stuff. When you're doing spacing, it's important to be consistent. So like this should be 16, and then this should be 16 right here. That's why it looks good. I'm just also explaining a little bit of design rules here. So we have the icons. We have the now we're missing the text. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. And then this goes underneath the h2 p.cs item text, because this is the text of the item. And I like to indent my paragraph tags. I just feel like it looks better. It's easier to look at. And it's just a personal preference. So now we have our HTML, and that's it. That's what we needed. You're going to notice there's like a little linear gradient. Whenever we have linear gradients like this, I prefer to use a pseudo element, a before or after element, and we put it on top of the image group. And that's exactly what happens here with the picture tag. So I'm not adding this image as a background image in CSS. That's not very performant. I like to use the picture element, and we get to have the source tag. So like on devices up to 600 pixels, load this image, and that would be the mobile image where we make it smaller. And then we have another one for tablet and up. And then this is the fallback. And what happens is we set the picture element to be the height and width of the parent, and absolutely positioned, top and left 0, and object fit cover. And we do the same thing for the image inside of it. And that way, however wide and tall its parent is that it is absolutely positioned to, in this case, the CS container, which is this class, which would be this whole group. So however tall and wide this is, that's exactly how tall and wide this will be. And the image with object fit cover would always scale itself to fit its parent, which is the CS picture element. And since this is also position absolute object fit cover, it will also be trying to cover its parent, which is the container. So when we jump into the CSS, I'm going to show you how this works. So we'll start with the top here. So when I'm looking at this, I see 444 pixels from the top. I don't necessarily, so if I add content here, like if maybe, let's say I added extra heading, this, like I want this content to be pushed up. And I think, let me see how this is working in here. Oh yeah, this is its own little box. So if I edit this, it's not going to do exactly what I want. There, I'm just going to leave this alone. But in the code, if I make this bigger, I want like a little bit of a leeway here. I don't want exactly the same space. So we're going to do hero. What I'm going to do is I got to grab the code stitch course. No, I think I have the core styles in here. Yeah, core CSS. So all of our stitches have these variables, and I'm going to do the padding variable. So padding is the var section padding. Oh, first I gotta npm start this. Make sure I have no other tasks running. All right, I get it. npm start. That would help if I did that. Yep, and we're good. There we go. Now we have everything. I'm gonna lower this. Forgot the little dashes. Save. So now we have the padding, and that's going to be core CSS. So that's what this is, the section padding. It's a clamp of 60 pixels top and bottom on mobile, growing at a 7.82 view width scaling unit. So it will grow at 7.82 times the view width, and then it will stop growing at 100 pixels wide and has 16 pixels left and right. And that is what this is. So we have that 16 pixels, 360. And there's, if we scroll down so we can see some of the, yep, we have 60 on top and bottom, 16 left and right. And this is where we're going to start. It looks like, so I went ahead and already just, I uploaded these to the DigitalOcean for all of our images for CodeStitch. I'm going to go ahead and put this back. And you'll see right away the image is overflowing, and that's because we gotta fix that. So I got padding. I don't think I need anything else on the hero. Let's just skip down to the CS background and just get this arranged so that it doesn't mess with me right now. CS background. So we're going to do, I gotta go to the CS container because this is the parent. So on the parent, I need position relative z index 1 because this is going to be absolutely positioned underneath it. So we're going to do display block first because picture elements are inline elements. We got to put it to display block so that we can have position absolute, top 0, left 0, object fit cover. And then I also want to have width 100%, height 100%. And then inside on the image, on the inside, I want the exact same thing. And then I want you to be z index -1. So I want you to be behind everything, like all the content inside of here. But this, you have to put a z index of 1 on the parent so that it doesn't go behind the parent. So if you ever run into that issue where you're trying to put something behind all the elements, but it goes behind the parent, and you don't want that because it disappears, you put z index 1 on the parent so that it still stays on the first layer of the parent. It's just behind everything else, like the content. So when we do this, we're gonna hit save. Now it is behind everything as a background image. And what's nice about it being in HTML is it's much more performant. The HTML loads faster. We can decode this with async, and then we use a preload tag in the head of your website to load the mobile image of this, whatever it is, and that helps improve your load times. And then you notice here we're missing all of the spacing. So that's what I'm going to do next. We're going to look at this spacing. So in here, if I look at Figma, I hold Alt and I go to the sides. I see 16 pixels top, left and right, 24 pixels top and bottom. So this is the content. This is CS content. So what I'm going to do is, this is the container. So then it goes CS content. That's going to be this div right here. So on this, I want padding, 24 pixels on top and bottom, 16 pixels left and right. And then as always, anything that has padding needs to have box box sizing, border box. That way the padding doesn't get included in the height and width. So I just want to make sure here. So this is padding. So what does it change to? And that's what I forgot to do. We have mobile, but how does it change on desktop? So it goes 24 and 16, but then on desktop, when we touch this, it is 40 and 40. So this isn't going to be the same anymore. This is going to be 24 pixels to 40 pixels, top and bottom. And then 16 pixels to 40 pixels. It's going to be left and right. We're going to do a clamp. So that's going to be a clamp is how we go from one value to another. So from mobile to desktop. So on mobile, this thing, padding top and bottom, which is the first value, we are going to go 24 is 1.5 rem, and we're going to grow at a rate of 4 view width units. Let's see what that looks like. And 2.5 rem, which is 40 pixels. Left and right, we're going to go 1 rem, and we're going to grow at the same rate, and then it's going to be 2.5 rem. So we got that. What I want to do now is we start here on mobile. So we have this padding. Let's make sure that when we grow, we're growing at the appropriate rate. So on tablet, I'd like to see 32, 32, 32, 40. So roughly 32, 32 by the time we get to tablet at 768. So if I make this 768, what is my padding going to be? And we are at 24 and 16. So it tells me we got to increase this. So I'm going to do 6 and 6. Because we are at 768, I want to see 32 and 32. So let's bump this up. 8, 8. I'm not seeing any movement. 1 point. Yeah, I put it in wrong. So let's go ahead and do 12. Let's just do 12. Let's get aggressive with it. 12. Is anything happening? Let's see, padding, hero, content. So let's see. Let's find out why. Oh, it says I forgot the clamp. See, when I looked at the CSS, I noticed that it wasn't a clamp. So something was happening. Whenever you have problems like this, like when you notice something isn't working, use the inspector tool, hover over the thing that's not working, which is this padding, click on it and see what's actually spitting out. So right now it was spitting out 1.5 rem and rem, which is the finishing here and here. And that should not be, it should be a clamp. So that told me that I was screwing up here. So let's go ahead and make this a 6. Let's just start back over. There we go. See, now it's moving. Now we have a clamp. That's what we wanted to see, but we didn't see that. So that's another good example of how to troubleshoot. When you're running into problems, inspect it, click on it, and see what values it's pulling from. Like what are the computed CSS values that it is doing. So that's how we solve that problem. Get really good at that. But this is 40 pixels, so that's too fast. So it's growing at 6 view width unit. Let's grow at 4. And let's see what that does. That gives us our padding 30, about 30, which is fine because it's just going to keep growing. And then eventually at 1800, I think we'll get there. We're already at almost 40. So I'm fine with that. Like at 768, here's the thing with mobile, with responsive design, is it doesn't have to be perfect, not in between. On mobile and on desktop, we have the actual like spacing. Like, okay, this at 360 pixels wide, we should have the 16 pixels left and right. 24 top and bottom. Desktop, we should have 40 top and bottom and 40 left and right. And everything in between is fair game. So like this says 32, 32, but we're using a clamp and it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be exact. All that matters is it is responding and it's changing, and we're close enough. Like we're on tablet 30.72. That's close enough because this is going to get bigger and it's eventually going to be 32 and it's going to keep growing. So I'm fine as long as I'm at 768, which is the next breakpoint, and it's close enough. That's all you need to worry about. So let's go ahead and go back to 360. Let's create this space above it. That should be above the content. So we're going to work on this, and then we're going to work on the content. So we got 444. I want, what do I want? I think I'm just going to do padding anyway. I think I'll do padding. I'll do a flex box. So what I'm thinking about doing is putting a, I don't know if I want to put a min height on it because I wanted to have a little space here so that if I add extra content, it moves up a little bit but doesn't make this taller. And because I want to create a lot of this space with padding. So I think I'm just gonna use the padding anyway. So this padding top is 420. This padding top is 534. Padding top is 559. So we're going, well, I'm gonna say 560. So we're going from 420. So that's going to be on the container. So on the container, padding top, this is going to be a clamp of 420 to 560. Oops, I wasn't typing on the right thing. 420 pixels to 560 pixels, and that's going to be a clamp. And calculator. So 420 divided by 16 gives us 26.25 rem. I'm going to do something crazy like 50 view width units. And then 560 divided by 16, 35 rem. So that's how we're going to get our spacing top and above. So this is the spacing. And if I click on the container, I'll see the computed value of 420. So this is the computed value. This is the box. So padding is 420. I need to make sure that when I get to tablet, I at least have 534 pixels. So if I go to tablet, 768, I want to see 500 and something pixels. What was it? It's still 420. It should be 534. So pretty much close to the end. So let's change this to 70. And that's at 537, which was the 540, right? 534. So let's go a little lower. Let's just do a 65. 499, which is good enough. I think that's good enough. Because it's going to keep growing and growing and growing, and we're going to get to that 540 pretty fast. So it still looks good. And that's what's going to happen when you see how it's growing with the screen size. Like the number is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but at 560, that's where it stops. And that's what's nice about clamp is we can tell it a starting value and an ending value and how fast we want it to grow based on how wide the view width unit is. So we got that done. Let's go back to 360, which is where I like to do all my stuff. You can do 320 if you want to get really, really specific for all those smaller, older phones. I'm I'm fine with it. I don't need it. So now we have this linear gradient, and it looks like it's a pretty standard top to bottom. 100%. So we have a 92% opacity at the start, goes to a 0 at the end, and it's linear going from top to bottom. So what I'm going to do is use a CSS gradient generator. CSS gradient. I like to use ColorZilla. You can use any one you want. I can just click this. I want a black one, vertical, reverse it. Now I got pretty much what I want. Change this. This is the opacity. So when I look here, we're starting at the 100%, which is over here, the darkness. This is going to be at 92. So I go to here and I choose 92%. That's how that's the opacity at the dark end. And then I want to make sure this is all the black that I want. Yeah, 0, 0. And that's also 0, but it's a 0 opacity here. So this is going to be the gradient that I get. Now I want to use, where's my pseudo element? Here we go. This is my code that I copy and paste all the time for my pseudo elements. And what I'm going to do is on the CS container, I'm going to add a pseudo element here, and I'm going to copy this background. So that's going to be this. Line this up a little bit, and nope. And you're going to see this happen a lot in your CSS or HTML. In Visual Studio, you hit Alt-Z, and it creates a word wrap. So that however wide the window is how wide the text is. I wish I knew that a long time ago. So I'm going to put this in here, remove that. And this is going to be height, width, 100%, position absolute. We're going to do z-index of -1 because I want it to go behind the content. But now this is clashing with the -1 of the CS background. And I want the CS background to be behind the overlay. So I'm going to make this 2. So this will be -2 because I want this to be behind the gradient overlay. And I'm going to label this gradient overlay. So when I save this, it creates the gradient overlay. But I can, the fact that I can still hover and touch these means that it's behind it. So when I'm clicking on the before is on top, and then the background is behind it. So now we have that set up now, nice and easy. And what I got to do now, what is our clamp? So we got 13, is this 20? 13, 16, I think that's already taken care of in the CS Topper CSS. So this is 39 all the way to 90. So that means container content. So I got to do a little override. So CS title, your font size is going to be a clamp of 39, just 39 divided by 16, 2.4375, 2.4375 rem. We're going to grow at, let's say 9 view width units. And then 90 divided by 16, 5.625 rem. And as always, leave a little comment on exactly what these values mean. So font size is going to be that. And then the color is going to change to the body white. Body text color white. That's another variable in our CSS. And when I do that, we're going to get that. And I think, yeah, we are, no. Okay, no caps. This is pulling from the primary variable, and we have a space. So this has a margin bottom on it already. Let's see what we got over here. This margin bottom is 16. That's good. So we just have to do a CS text override. The CS text by default is that gray color. We need it to be the body text color white. So we got that, and then I want 32 pixels between it and the button. So on here, I'm going to say margin bottom 32 divided by 16. And if I should have mentioned this before, I'm using less CSS preprocessor, which is why this is dot less. What this does, this is just less syntax. It does the calculations for me for rem. I just put it in a little parentheses, and then it spits out the actual value in CSS. So it will do the calculation for me, and it will say 2 rem, which is 32 divided by 16. Just to get that out of the way, if you're confused why your CSS is not working, it's because it doesn't know what to do with these things. That's why you use less. But this is all part of our kits. So if you use the CodeStitch Intermediate kit on GitHub, we have less and Sass already configured, so you don't have to worry about it. But we got the 32. Now we got to style the button. And buttons aren't too bad. That CS button, solid. CS button, solid. So with this guy, it looks like we have 48 pixels left and right. This is 16 pixels, bold, and it is 46 pixels to 56 pixels top and bottom. So let's start with font size. That's going to be 16 divided by 16 rem. Line height is going to be the clamp, and that's going to be the 46. 46 divided by 16 is 2.875 rem. Let's grow up 5 view width unit, and then 56 divided by 16 is 3.5 rem. 46 pixels to 56 pixels. There you go. Got the line height. This is a link, so text decoration is none. Font weight is bold. And I don't think this has a margin on it by default, but I'm just gonna do margin 0 just to zero it out. Padding is 0 top and bottom, 48 pixels left and right. And then the color is going to be the white. Background color is the primary. And then I'm going to say text align center. That should center that. And I think that should be it in one go. Let me see. So if we start with a nothing and save, now we have a something, but it needs to be display. And so see how it's not taking its height? That's because A tags are display inline by default. So if I take this display inline block, if I just give it a block level declaration inline block, then that should be able to accept a height. So now it's 46. So keep that in mind. Spans and A tags, they are display inline. So if you want them to have height and width values, if you want to be able to transform them, add things to them, you need to make them a block level element. Whether it's usually going to be inline if you don't want them to be on their own line. But block is it's where it pushes everything away and it's on its own line. Like if I did this as block, it would take up the whole thing because it's a block level element now. It's taken up the whole block instead of just, the house. So inline block is like, okay, I'm just going to be as wide as I need to be. And that's what that does. So we got the book a call. And this is red. In the design, it's orange. Doesn't matter. We just have the same base variables. When you plug this into your CodeStitch intermediate kit, you just change the variables and these will change automatically. So now we have basically that. We have the hero from start to finish. So when we grow, when we get the tablet, we need them to go to a horizontal orientation. So what I want to do right now is I want to set up the flexbox so that they're vertical, and all I got to do on tablet is to set the flex direction to row. So that is going to be on the CS content. I'm going to scroll up here and I'm going to say display flex. I want flex direction to be column, which is up and down. And nothing's going to change, which it's not supposed to because it's basically that orientation already. It's just we're setting this up so that when I go to tablet and I touch the CS content and change the flex direction to row, and I'm going to add a gap of, looks like the minimum gap here is 6,400. I think we'll just do a gap of clamp from 4 rem. We're going to do 10 view width units and then 6.25 rem. That's going to take us from 64 pixels to 100 pixels. And I just have that memorized. I know 100 pixels is 6.25 rem. So that's going to be the gap between the children of this flex box. So there's 2 children. There's the CS Flex, which is the content here, and the other CS Flex, which is the content here. So what I want to do is I'm going to save here. And when we go to 768, now they are side by side. However, it looks a little different. Like namely, this looks too big. That's 69 when it should be 49. So that means I have to change my clamp. It's too big. So this, let's do this to 6. That should be 49. This is about 46. Close enough. That's good. And you'll notice that we have this margin bottom. And I think there's a better way to do this. So instead of having a margin bottom on the CS title, margin comes before color. Margin bottom is 0. So we're going to set a margin bottom of 0. You notice the problem is now there's no more space, but we have a flex box here. So I want to make this, I'm going to make this row gap of 16 pixels. And that's going to create this space. So this is the content box. And since I have these already in their own divs, and in this div and in this div, I can use Flexbox to arrange them vertically and create a gap between the rows, which is this way, of 16 pixels. So now when I go to tablet, I don't have to override a margin. And that's about writing cleaner CSS. Like instead of having to override values in later media queries, if you set them up properly, like using flex boxes so that your gaps are creating the spaces instead of margins that you have to reset or remove later on, that makes the CSS a lot easier to maintain because there's not as many moving parts going on that you might not know about. So that's why I arranged this way. I switched it. I went back because I realized, no, there's a better way to do it. You're not going to do it perfectly the first time every time. So you're going to just run into some issues where you think, I can do this a little better. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to clean it up. So now we're here. And we need to push this down. So this flex box, so if we look at the flex box here, both of them are the same height, so they're tall. The only problem is this flex is it's pushing to the top. If you look here, I essentially just want everything pushed to the bottom. So what we can do is we can use the property flex end to put it down at the bottom. So if we look at CS Flex, I think what we need to do, if I try to set everything on mobile if I can. So CS content, CS title, CS Flex is what they're inside of. So if I do CS Flex, display Flex, the Flex box, Flex direction, column. So if I do that, nothing's going to change. because they are already in a column formation. So if I do this, the only thing that changes is now this is in a flex box. It makes everything stretch to fit. And that's what's happening here. This is stretching to fit, but we don't want that. The design doesn't say to do that. So instead, what we gotta do is we gotta go to this button on the CS button, and we have to add, we're in a flex box, so align self, flex start. So align, you use align when it's a vertical flex box. So it's a column, which is vertical. You use justify when it is a horizontal flex box or a row direction. So that's the difference. I wanted to align itself vertically to the start of the flex box. And that is what's happening here. So this is the box, and it's sending itself to the start. Instead of being the default stretch, which means to stretch the width of its flexbox parent, we are telling it instead, don't stretch, don't fill it up. I just want you to align to the left. And that's where I want you to go and be as wide as you're supposed to be. So that's why we have that. So when we get up to here, if I do what I want to do, CS flex, so direction column. So now these are in columns. So you see we have the flex box, the column, so they're on top of each other. Oh, excuse me. It's late over here. Gonna have to keep that in the video, but that's what we do when we do it live. This flex, we want to push things to the bottom. So since we are a column direction, justified content is not left and right. Justified content is now up and down. So I want to justify content flex end, which is at the end of the flex box or the bottom. When I do that, nothing changes here, but when I go to 768, it changes here because you see this is the flex box and it's sending all of its children to the end of the box. So justify content is the up and down when you're in a column direction because everything's being placed vertically. So justify content means, okay, up and down, where do you want things to go? I want it to go to the end of the flex box, so at the end. If this was flex direction row, so you see how this is row, like it's horizontal now. If I wanted it to go to the end, you see justify content's not working anymore. Instead, we need to align items. When we do align items, that's up and down when you're in a row. So when your flexbox is horizontal, align items is how you do it vertically. So when I save, now everything aligns to the bottom. That's flexbox. I know it seems so weird to have them flip-flop like that, but just remember align is a line is only vertical, like up and down for a row. Justify content is only up and down for a column, and then it's just reverse. So row is justify for left and right, and then align is left and right. So align items is left and right on a vertical on a column. So I'm going to undo this column, flex end. So now we got this. We're pushing everything to the bottom. This is how you use flex boxes to do what you want. I use these, I call these sacrificial divs, where I need a div to arrange my content. There's no other way around it. It's the box model. So these have to live inside of this container, and these two things have to be arranged next to these two things. And I want everything to be placed at the bottom. So I create the flex boxes to push things up and down, left and right, and away from each other. Like even this one, the CS content, I think I actually need to have once we go to row, or once we go to, yeah, once we go to row on tablet, I actually want to justify content space between. And what this does is it makes sure that however wide this box gets, it's going to push both of these children to the far left and far right of the parent. And it will always be on the edge of the parent no matter what. So this gap property that I created here on the content on the yeah this is the content. So I think on here we go. This gap, this 64 to 100 pixels, this is just the minimum gap that I want for it to look the way it's supposed to look here. So this is just the minimum gap. Obviously, once I get to here, that gap doesn't mean anything because now it's 726 pixels. I don't need to actually say be 726 pixels because justify content space between is doing it for me. When I do space between, that means like this is automatic. This space is automatic. This gets pushed to the left. This gets pushed to the right. And space between is basically saying as much space between these things as possible. And this is as far away they can get because I use the padding to create the space inside. And then I use the gap to create the minimum space that I want on them for smaller screen sizes. This is just the minimum space I want. And then I let Flexbox take it the rest of the way. So when I set this, what's the, I think it was 1800. So if I go to here, padding, so this creates the space left and right and around, and padding top. I need to set margin to auto so that it will always be centered. Width is always going to be 100%. And then max width is going to be 1800 pixels. So what this is doing is it's saying be 100% the width of its parent, which is the hero section. Stop growing at 1800 pixels wide. And margin auto is how you center a block level element. So the margin around this container will be auto. And we'll see like if we zoom out and we go all the way wide, and there you go, 2040. So right away, we have our padding top and bottom here. We have our space. Our minimum space is still only 100 pixels, but they are still on opposite ends of the design, which is what we want, just like this. But if you notice, this is a little off. So this is 539. We're going to say 540 pixels wide. If I go to this, it's actually 650. So that's a problem. So we need to fix that. This one specifically should be 540. So I want to target this second flex box, or the second CS Flex. So what I like to do is I'll have CS Flex 2 and CS Flex 1. So we can have the base style that they all share. So they'll share these, but if I want to target one of them individually, I just prefer to just give them a number. So this will be CS Flex 2. Nice and easy. So on CS Flex 2, this is CS content, that's CS Flex. That's CS Flex 2. I want to set your max width to 540. And that's it. Now it's 540. Now it's matching the design. So if you look at the design, you see that we have a little orphan text here, which you don't want. You don't want an orphan text. It's a text that it's a word that's on its own line. You don't want to do that, but it's just there for right now. But that's how we get it. We want this to be 540 pixels. We know that it's supposed to be this much wide. I don't like 539. I prefer even numbers, 540, but that's what I'm doing. And we know this is 40 pixels top, 40 pixels, 40 pixels left and right, 40 pixels top and bottom. So when we check this out, guess what? 40 pixels top all around. This is 540, and this is how we make pixel perfect designs. we measure the space between everything, and we create the minimum spaces, we create the clamps for them to start and grow at, and we let the flex boxes and the clamps do the rest. So this is always going to be pushed to the bottom, this is always going to be pushed to the bottom, and I think that's it for this section. That's how we do something like this. Now we're going to test the responsiveness. So responsive design does not have to always do with how it responds to the screen size. For me, true responsive design is how it responds to changes in content. So if I take this text, like let's say if I make this text an extra 40 words long and I save, how does it respond? So it looks like this padding is pushing against this, right? So that padding is pushing against it. Why is there, okay, yeah, it's also pushing against this padding. So as this grows taller, so does this space. This space will always be maintained. So this will always be 540 whatever pixels. Is that 540? Yeah, 560. This will always be 560. And as this gets taller, let's add another 40 words. Save. You see that it's still 560. It's just now this entire container is now 1040 tall because it's pushing against this padding. A lot of developers I know would probably have created this as a height. They would have put a fixed height on this container, but fixed heights are not responsive, because if this was a fixed height and you added a bunch of content, then it would just keep going and going and going. It'd eventually break through the top. And I know that's unrealistic. That's not going to happen in this design, but you want it to respond. You want it to maintain the space. Like this is made so that the top of the image is visible. So it has its space to be visible, because this type of website architecture is very visually heavy. It's image focused. So we want the focus to stay here on the image and the content here on the bottom, so that no matter how much content we add, there is still this space here so that we can maintain the focus of this image. So I'm gonna go ahead and undo this, undo that. And now you see it's still the 560 tall, but this content is just smaller. And the same thing's gonna happen when we add, let's add a couple words to the header. Let's add 4 words. So now this got taller, but everything is still pushed to the bottom. And I think, how wide do I want this? If people are going to be using this, I want, let's see, title, let's say max width of 25 characters. There we go. That gives me some leeway. I like this better. But what happens now is if I remove this, it's modern architecture, and now it's not maintaining the design. So let's just do 20. Yeah, that's not working. Let's do 17. Let's just remove it entirely. Okay, that seemed to be working. So we'll keep that as is. And if you need to manually create spaces, what you would do is you would wrap, there's 2 ways. You either wrap each word group in a span tag and set those spans to display block so they're all on their own separate line, or you add a break. So if, excuse me, yawning again. Here we go. It's almost midnight over here. So if we go back to this problem, I want this to go in 2 lines. The easiest solution is just to do a break element. Break, and now it's on 2 lines. Doesn't matter how wide it is. It's going to break to 2 lines. That's the easiest way. Or we just wrap a span around each word and then set the span to display block, and then they'll be on their own lines. And you can do that for 1 word or multiple words. But that's 2 ways around it. But I'm gonna leave this as is. I'm gonna remove this max width. This seems to be working, and let people decide how they want to use this. So that's done. Now, I think this is probably the hardest part of this is this. I think a lot of people would have problems with this on how to make it. So now we go to the services, and so we got tablet. We don't need any of these, so we can just remove these. So we got this done in 2 media queries. And by keeping as many styles in the mobile as possible, this makes maintenance a lot easier. Because like all the big changes happen in mobile, and then all of the just arrangements happen later on. Like I'm just changing a flex box from column to row here and adding an extra little gap, and that's all that's happening on tablet. Everything else is literally happening in mobile, and it's being done with the clamps. So my goal is to use as few media queries as possible, and it's a fun little puzzle. So let's go to 360. And so we have this. It's as tall as it's supposed to be, but this is not what it's supposed to be right now. So what I'm going to do, we're going to start here. I'm going to see if I can code this all the way out without looking. So I'm just going to code this as I see it, and then I'm going to save it, and then we'll look at desktop and see if I did everything right. So right away, services, we're going to collapse this. We got the card group, so CS card group. We got to reset the padding 0. I like to put margin above padding, margin 0. We got to have no padding on top, but a padding of 16 pixels. So what I want to do is, because this padding is coming from the variable for padding, which has the 16 pixel left and right. So I'm still going to add the section padding, but on padding top, I'm going to say 0. It looks like we have 60 here, so we're going to use everything in that padding variable except for padding top, which we want to override and reset to 0. So we're going to set that, give a little space here. Padding is 0, margin is reset to 0. I want to turn this into a flex box, so display flex, so that I can start arranging things. And now I can do flex direction column, so I want them to be up and down, just like this. And then I want a gap of 32 pixels on the row. So the row gap is 32 pixels, right? And then once I get here, see this row gap is 32, but the column gap, we got to fix this. I don't like it. This is going to be flexbox this. And then you're going to be filling your container. I just got to fix this really quick. I noticed something I didn't like. This gap of 20. There we go, 20. There we go. Everything needs to align with the grid. So this space needs to create this here. So this needs to be a flex box. This needs to be 20. And these guys need to be fill container. There we go. So I want to do a display. Actually, I want to do a grid. We're going to reset this. We're going to do display grid. Grid template column. So I want to do a repeat of, I like to use 12. So 12 columns, each one fractional. So it'll be 12 equal sections. And then there will be a row gap up and down of 32 pixels, and then a column gap, which is between them on the up and down. So this is the column. This 20 pixels, that's a column gap, and this 32 pixels, the row is the wide one. So this column gap is going to go from clamp, and I just know this by heart. It's 1 rem, and it's going to go by 3 view width units to 1.25 rem. which is 16 pixels to 20 pixels. I'm going to put that there. Because when I do a grid, it's so much easier to do these blocks here to keep them perfectly uniform and filling in space. It's much easier if this is done by a grid instead of Flexbox. And when I do 12, it's nice because I could start 12. So make this 12 columns wide. On tablet, make them 6 columns wide. And on desktop, make them 3 columns wide. You see? 1, 2, 3. You see the 3 columns? 1, 2, 3. That's essentially what's happening in the grid as we're making them 3 columns wide. So I'm going to start here. And then the CS item, we're going to reset the list style to none, margin 0, padding 0, just to reset that in case something's on there. And then we're going to do the grid column. So we're going to span 12 columns on the so grid column is the up and down, right? So we want to spread 12 columns, the whole width, and I want to display flex this, so I'm going to put the flex on top. Display flex. It's going to be flex direction column because I want it up and down. So this is what we're dealing with now. So we're going to have 16 pixels gap. So gap 16 pixels. I think we got that. So now let's go to the CS. Excuse me. Not used to talking this much. All right, font size. So if I click on this, that is 20 pixels. And when we go to desktop, it's 25. So let's do clamp. That's going to be 1.25 pixels. That's 20. And we're going to do 3 view with unit. That should be enough. Comma. And then 1.5625. I just memorized that. That's 25 pixels. That's going to be 20 pixels to 25 pixels. And then, come on. Line height is always 1.2 em for headings for me. Font weight is bold. Margin is 0. And the padding is 16. Whoops. Undo. The padding is 16. So we noticed here that we have it's a flex box, but we also have this space here, and this space is what's creating like this gap between the border. So I'm going to set a border bottom, margin, border bottom 1 pixel solid, that color. And now what I'm going to do is padding bottom of 16 divided by 16 rem. And what this is going to do is it will create this space on the inside of this. So this is our H2 element. And I want this space on the inside so that the border will still show up on the bottom. And that's, strategically using padding versus margin, or some people might want to use a margin to push down. But I want to have this line. And the easiest way to make this line in the least amount of code is to make it a border. But if it's going to be a border bottom to this H2, this guy, I need to create space on the inside of it so that the border is still at the bottom. And that's what I'm doing here with padding bottom and putting the border bottom here. And now I want to flex box this. So this is going to be a row. This is 24 pixels wide. So let's do display flex. It's row by default. And all I got to do is justify content space between, and then the minimum space that I want between them. So let's say, 8 pixels. There we go. Gap 8. Whoops. 8 divided by 16 rem. So what's happening here is like, what if this word was longer, right? What if you changed it and now since you don't have a gap, it will be touching this. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, what is the minimum gap that I want between these guys? And even 8 pixels is too much, too little for me. I'm going to make it 16 just because It's not a random number. It's because that's what the padding here is. And design, good design is about consistency and symmetry. So if this is 16 pixels, this gap is 16 pixels. You want to know what's going to feel really good is if this gap was 16 pixels too, if the text was a little longer. So I'm planning ahead for that by putting the gap in, even though I don't need it right now, because you see this gap is definitely more than 16 pixels. But in case the word gets longer, there will always be at least a 16 pixel gap between them. And that's my preventative CSS. I'm thinking ahead. What if I add more stuff? How does that affect things? So now we have that. I got to add the color, which is the header color variable that we have in CodeStitch. Header color. And now we're going to do this guy, which is the item text. And that is 16 pixels. Let's be 16. And then the line height is always 1.5 em for body font for me. Margin is going to be 0 because all p tags have a default margin of whatever. And I just like to reset that just to be safe. And the color is going to be the var body text color. So it'll be the text color. And then what I want to do is for their text alignment, sometimes if you don't set it, they might just be centered when you want them a different way. So text align, what I like to do, I like to tell it to inherit its text align value. You are going to inherit your text align value. And what inherit means is it takes it from its parent, just like any child would inherit their traits. The parent is the CS item. So here, I want everything to be text align left. So all the elements inside of this CS item will be text align left. So I'm doing this once on the parent instead of multiple times on the children. It's just, again, cleaner, non-repetitive coding. So when I save that, now in the live version, this will all be left aligned. And then this justify content space between will be pushing everything between it. However, what happens if I have 2 lines of content here? So if I do this and make it 2 lines, you see that it is like this is always aligning to the top. In Flexbox, you have to tell it where you want things to be pushed. So inside of this Flexbox, it looks like I want everything pushed to the top. So here we go again. We are in a row orientation, which is horizontal. So align items is how we position up and down inside of here. So I want to do align items flex start. So be at the start of the Flexbox, which is at the top. So when I say that, this will automatically, like if I add more words to it, this little icon here will always be at the top, so it's not centered and looking weird. And now we got to do the CS icon here. So CSH2, this is inside the H2, so we're going to do CS icon. Width of 24 divided by 16 rem, height of auto, so that if I ever switch out this icon with anything else, it will always be 24 pixels wide, but its height will be automatic based on what its actual aspect ratio is. I've seen developers put heights on these, on their icons, because that's what it says in the height and width attribute, right? Nope, you don't need that, because if you do ever swap it out, then it will just be distorted. So you always have its height to be auto, so that if you swap it out with a new image that you grab from Flat Icon or wherever else you get your icons, it will automatically resize its height what it should be. So maybe an icon is 24 pixels wide by 32 pixels. But if you have the height set to 24 by 24, it will be scrunched. It'll be shorter, like it got hit with a cartoon hammer. So we're going to set height to auto and display to block because, again, image tags are display inline by default. And inline elements do not take a height and width value as well as transform and margins. So if you want to use those styles on those elements, you have to add display block so it becomes a block level element so it can accept those styles. Took me a long time to really kind of wrap my head around that and why, but that is the gist of it. Just remember inline elements are the picture, a tag, span, and image. So if you want to manipulate those in any way, just put display block on them by default and then work with them. So we got the icon, we got the border, we got the gap, we got the text, and we got the margins. Everything's set. So I think we're good here. So let's go to tablet. And now we're going to set the CS item, grid column, span 6. And then on small desktop, grid column, span 3. And I want the CS card group, you're going to be width 100% of the parent. And then your max width is going to be the 1800. So it matches. And then I also want you to be margin auto so that the margin left and right will be automatic and it will push equally against the left and right sides. And that is why it centers block level elements. So we're going to do margin auto so it centers the card group left and right. So now both of these, see, this is a max width of 1800. And then if I group these together, this is 1800. That is where they stop. So they will now both be the exact same width as they need to be. And all we have now is this gap of 100, which is already being taken care of by the section padding on that guy. So I think I'm ready. Except you see this gap here, it's 100. So I need to get from 20 to 100. So let's try this. Card group 16 to 20, column gap. It should be 6.25. And I don't know if we can make it that. It might be too wide of a clamp to actually get here. But I'm gonna save. Let's make this like let's make this a 7 just to see what it does. But I want to see how close I got without looking. And have a little look ma no hands kind of deal. So let me just make sure, just double check here. So yeah, padding top 0. 0. Just we got the grid, got everything. Let's see how we did. Surfaces. Oh, services. Did I mess that one up too? Surfaces. There we go. So we have this. This is the 60 pixel gap. That's a 16. It's the grid. And you see here, see how this is working? This padding is pushing down on that border, creating that space. And now if I add the extra words to the header, you see how everything is aligning to the start of the flexbox at the top. So the start is always top and left. That's the start. The end is always right and bottom. So this is pushing all the way to the top. And this gap creates a space. We don't need to use a margin because what's nice, without using a margin, if we remove the CS item text, that margin is not there. But now it's there because there's a gap. So I prefer to use gaps over margins if I don't have to. So we have that. Now let's see what happens when we go to tablet. So growing, growing, growing. And then 764 or a 7 or yeah, 768. But we notice, see this, I think that gap is pretty big. Yeah, if we click on the card group, computed, and that's going to be column gap. Column gap is 56. That's a little too wide. So I knew that was going to be a problem. So let's just readjust. Let's see if we can get away with a 5. Does that look a little better? Column gap is 40. Let's do a 3. Column gap is about a 24, which is close enough. Let's see what happens when I go to 1800. Is that column gap 100? And I say no. So tells me that this is not going to work very well. I think the best bet I think I just have to add another override clamp. So if I just make this one 2.5, take this guy, and then at 1024 is when we start getting a little frisky. At CS card group, we're gonna do a we're gonna have 20 pixels to 100. 1.25. Let me double check that. Yeah, that's 20. So I'm gonna hit you at like 6. And we're gonna go 6. There we go. We're at 100. So let's go down to here. At 1024, we are at 64. So that's too much. Let's dial this down to 4. That's 43. A little much. Let's do 3. And 32. You know, I think I can live with 32 because we want this to grow, and we want this to be just about 100 at 1800. Right now, this column gap is let's try plus 4 rem. Let's see if that helps. Okay, that got me there. Let's do 2 rem. I'm just trying to find the balance. That's just too much. That's not gonna work. So honestly, we're just gonna take this and on large desktop, we're just gonna straight up we're just gonna say you're gonna be 100 pixels at this wide. And so what I want to do now is in card group. So here I'm going to say changes to 100 pixels at large desktop, 1300 pixels. So if I'm ever troubleshooting in the future and I'm trying to edit this column gap and I look at mobile, because that's where I always look first for values, I can see here like, oh, 16 to 20 pixels on mobile. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. But it changes to 100 pixels at large desktop at 1300 pixels. This is called documentation. This is how you write little notes to yourself and anyone else in the future on what the heck you're doing and where everything is so that it's much easier to maintain and edit. So we put that there, and now at 1800, boom, we got our wide shot there. And if I zoom out even further, if I can, and we see that we have the 100 pixels up and down. We have this stopping at 1800, and you see the orange on the left and right. That is your margin pushing equidistant from its parent. And here is the parent one. This is our padding bottoms 100 pixels, padding left and right 16 pixels, which is not really doing anything. but it's there as the padding on smaller screens. And then once they stop growing, they're not touching the edges anymore. So these paddings left and right are not really needed, but they're just there as the bumpers. The only problem I have right now is this. So I'm trying to think, when we have a two-liner, it makes it taller. And I think I want this to be as tall. So let's see if I'm just going to try something, see if this works. On CSH2, if I set its height to 100%, that'll do it. So what's happening is, because the CS item is a flexbox, this guy right here. So because this is a flexbox, I set the H2 to be a height 100%. So it's trying to be 100% height of its parent. Unfortunately, there is a p tag inside of it. So it has to flex around it. And the gap property is what creates that minimum space between the children. And then when this is set to height 100%, it's going to be as tall as it can be, but the flex box is basically giving it rules on its height. So it's basically saying, yeah, you can be 100% height of me as much as you want, but we got to work around this other p tag in here. So this is pushing down, creating that space, so because this is making it taller. So as this makes this CS item taller, this CS item is being the same height, because that's what a grid is doing. The CSS grid makes them all the same height. So when this is taller, there's more space available. And what I'm doing instead now is I'm telling the H2 to take up that available space. Take it all. So that if we do have headers that are two-liners, we can still maintain the integrity of the design and not have those weird staggered humps that was showing up. So if I remove this content, they're still all in line. And if I add lorem, let's add 10 words to this guy. It's still maintaining the design. Like, these guys are all lined up, and that's what we want. We want these to be lined up, and that's how we created it. So this content is making this box, this CS item, taller, which is in turn making all these other ones taller, which is creating a lot more extra space. So if I removed this height 100%, you see how we all have all this extra space in the flex box? I want them to be pushed down, but I can't use, so this is up and down. So I would say justify content space between, so I can shove this guy to the top and this guy to the bottom. But the problem is, this border is not going to line up. It's just not going to work. So this border is attached to this H2. So this H2 is what has to do the growing. This H2, their heights have to be the same. So that's why we have this height 100%. And now we got that. So let's see what happens now. There's another side to this. What happens if I add extra text to the text? Let's do 15, lorem 15, save. And now you see we have this staggeredness again. However, that will have to do, because if we try to make it work, there's just no way, because then you'd have, if you try to make this be really tall and these really small and still have this gap here, it would just look awful. So that is the trade-off here. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. That's the trade-off. We'd rather have these all the same size, And if you're doing this site, your goal is to make these 4 boxes the same. So if you're noticing that one is on 3 lines and the other ones are all on 2, fix that one to be on 3 lines because it's better design. It's going to look better. I'm going to undo all these. Those are my checks. So now everything is as it should be. And there we go. Now we're done. It's 100% responsive to anything I want to do to it. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna do this. I'll show you. So when we collapse all of our media queries, this is a lot easier to look at. I'm looking at the hero section, and oh, get out of here. And that's this section. Let me get right there. And then that's the services. So you see how everything's all lined up here and lined up here. This is good CSS organization. And now when I want to go to services, if I'm at tablet and I want to edit what's ever happening here and just here, I can know, okay, let's go to tablet. And the only thing that's happening here is the grid columns are going to 6. But let's say I wanted this to be 4. I would just change this to 3, and now they're all in a row like this. Or if I want to do something special on tablet, I just add that extra code here to do it. And maybe I want to do something else on desktop. Doesn't matter. It's all very easy to see. I can see the pixel value. This is at 1024, 1300. So this just makes things a lot easier when you're working. Back in the day, I used to have all the CSS for mobile, not even in a media query. It's just floating around the CSS, and it's so messy. And just trying to find the section I'm looking for, and even be able to just pull that code out to reuse it other places. And then I'd add a media query for tablet. I'd write all the tablet code for every section on top of each other in a single media query. And it made edits a pain in the butt, because now I had to open up a single media query and scroll the whole thing to find out where everything is. Whereas by breaking up all of the media queries by section, grouping them together with a comment tag that tells you which section this belongs to, and putting your mobile code in a 0rem media query, even though it doesn't make sense, but it allows me to do this, and now I can look at it a lot easier. So this is how I do all of my sites. When I build my own websites for my clients, this is how I structure it, and it is the cleanest, easiest method I've ever come across for writing CSS to make it easier to edit, organize, and maintain. And that's how we do things. So that's a quick crash course into mobile first development, how to start thinking about your HTML and how it all works together from start to finish. Like when you're looking at tablet, desktop, and mobile, you can see here that, okay, these guys are grouped together. So that tells you how to write your HTML, what needs to be wrapped in a sacrificial div so that they can be grouped together and arranged. And when you look at overlapping elements like this, it's always going to be position absolute. If there's something that is overlapping something else, it's always either going to be position absolute or a negative margin. But in this case, it's a background image, and we're placing the background image behind this content and using paddings and flex boxes to create this space around everything. We're not using fixed heights. Never use a fixed height for any section in your HTML and CSS. It is poor practice because it's not responsive. Fixed values do not respond. So you let things grow and respond to the changes in content and the height and the width of the things that you add to it, so that when you do go to edit these things, it's not going to break. It is it's very flexible. So with that ends this video for this fancy little modern hero section. I will be making a lot more of these, and next time I'll have a glass of water at my desk, so you don't have to hear me hacking along outside of this. So hope you enjoyed this, and hope you enjoyed Code Stitch. Thanks. Psych, it's not over. I forgot to make these guys links. I was just looking this over. So like you notice there's arrows. These are services. Clearly this looks like a button. So what we're going to do to change that, if you ever have to change something in the future to a link, all we do is we take this content, add a link tag. I'm going to call this CS link. And there you go. Paste it. So I'm going to do copy a tag.cs link, tab, enter, paste. Take this a.cs link. Nope, tab, hit. One more time. Nope, a.cs link. Nope, tab, space, yeah. What's going to happen though is there's going to be text decoration underlines. So what we have to do in the code, here's the CS item. So the next thing would be .cs link, text decoration none. Get rid of that. And we're missing the flex box. So all we got to do is display flex and column. Text decoration. Here we go. Just move that there. Oh, and we need the gap. So we move whatever flexbox property for the inside on the CS item, and we move that to the CS link on the inside. And then we are good there. So it looks like this guy is not behaving. So that looks like the CS link is changing how this behaves. So the CS link is not 100% the height of the CS item. See that? That's the problem. So I want the CS link 100% the height. There we go. So I want the CS link to be the 100% the height of the CS item so that this CHH2 can still function properly when we have multi-line headings. So that is how we do that. And yeah, now this is the end of the video, I promise.